Hello, and welcome back to the Birthright Podcast. My name is Taylor, and I am your soul sister and your guide here on this journey into what I believe is our birthright as women to know. Here on this podcast, we talk about everything from our bodies to our cycles and really the ancient rhythms that this modern day world has forgotten about. And remember, there is no becoming, just remembering. It's been one of my favorite things to do as I've been getting older is just really remembering these ancient ways, learning about them and feeling it in my body and feeling what is true for me. And I can tell you guys what is true for me right now is this sunshine, hallelujah, that is shining through my window. I have just been eating up this transition into spring. The rosebuds are just, they're so incredible here. They're just this bright fuchsia color, and then the mountain laurels. I had never heard of this tree, and I've lived in Texas my entire life, but this is the first time I'm really connecting to the wildlife, the plants, learning the names of all of the things around me. And mountain laurels, they smell like grape soda or sweet wine. They just fill the air with this beautiful, sweet scent. I'm just feeling so delighted with spring. But today, we're going to be talking about a different season within our cycle, and one that I believe is one of the most misunderstood parts of the cycle. So if you're just tuning in, we are in the middle of a 6-part mini-series on the menstrual cycle. We've covered in the first episode really the foundations of what it is, what the 4 phases are, what's actually happening hormonally. In the last episode, we covered shame and where does menstrual shame actually come from and how it's not actually ours to own. And what I want to talk about today is the luteal phase, our inner autumn. And this is so timely because I just came out of a very, very deep luteal phase. I just started my bleed yesterday. Woohoo! Welcome to my moon. Thank God. Because the luteal phase can be really tough. We are going to double click on why this phase gets such a bad reputation, what's actually going on in the body, and how you can use this phase to your advantage and make it not so terrible, and some practical tools and resources to get more of the magic out of this phase and less of the mess. So let's dive in. In today's modern culture, the luteal phase is pretty much associated with one thing, and that's PMS. And some of the traits associated with PMS can be moody, irritable, sensitive, difficult, hormonal. I always think it's so funny when someone says, I'm just hormonal. We're all hormonal all the time. Our hormones are always changing and fluctuating. But because of this narrative, because of this stigma that there's this certain irritability and friction and just crunchiness that exists during this luteal phase, a lot of women just grow up believing that something is wrong with them during this time. Instead of becoming curious about what's happening in their body, they try to suppress it instead. So hearing things like, oh, I'm just PMSing, I'm being crazy, I should calm down. What if that entire framing is backwards though? What if it's actually when we become more perceptive? So let's talk about what's actually happening hormonally in the luteal phase. The luteal phase is what comes right after ovulation. So it's essentially the second half of your menstrual cycle. It goes from post-ovulation until the first day of your bleed, which on average is about 10 to 14 days. So the precursor to luteal is ovulating. Now, this is a little asterisk that I want to put on here, that it is not guaranteed that you ovulate each month. And actually ovulating is what results in the increase of the hormone progesterone, which is the all-star of the luteal phase. Progesterone is a hormone that has this grounding, calming, almost like nesting quality. It's really quite intelligent, and it helps make some of the symptoms that come in the luteal phase more manageable. But again, I just want to asterisk that if you're experiencing really intense symptoms during your luteal phase, it would be worth exploring to see if you're actually ovulating. And there's a lot of different tools and hormonal tests that you can do out there. I won't make that the topic of this episode, but a very important part of creating a healthy luteal phase is ovulation, because the follicle that the egg is released from, it actually shifts into a structure called the corpus luteum, which is what produces progesterone. It becomes like a little progesterone factory. So imagine if you're not actually ovulating, then you're not getting that spike in progesterone, and you're not getting those calming and grounding effects, and maybe you're getting the amplified symptoms. So progesterone is really that shifting of our energy inward, which can feel like the rug got pulled out from under you, coming from that super high energy ovulation where you are wanting to be seen, you're more social, more outwardly expressive. Progesterone is the hormone that brings us naturally more inward, and it does this for a good reason. Our body is preparing for the possibility of pregnancy. And so what we're doing is we're actually redirecting all of our internal resources to that of making the perfect home for a baby. So your nervous system might become more sensitive during this time. Your tolerance for external stimulation can decrease. Something that might have felt good for you to do during ovulation might seem unbearable during this time of the month. And your body is really asking for something very specific, which is discernment. Discernment of your time, your energy, and also how you fuel your body, which another really interesting thing is that your metabolism actually increases during your luteal phase, meaning that your body needs more fuel. You're preparing for the possibility of pregnancy, which means you need more energy. If you find yourself feeling hungrier during the luteal phase or craving more nourishing foods, these are your body's signals that are going to help your body in preparation for pregnancy. How cool is that? So it's important to understand what's actually going on within our bodies so we can work with it instead of fighting it. If you're someone who is used to skipping breakfast or doing intermittent fasting, during the luteal phase, it actually is not a great idea to do that because your body is asking for more fuel. So make sure you are able to listen to those cues, and you don't need to make a story about it of that I shouldn't be eating more or why am I so hungry? Just let your body have this time to nourish itself, to really fully go through the full benefits of the luteal phase. Unfortunately, as women, a lot of us are conditioned by this dieting culture to ignore our hunger cues. But really what our body wants during this phase is to eat enough, to choose grounding and really nourishing foods, warming foods, and allow your body to have the energy that it's asking for. Now that we know what's going on physiologically within the body with the increase in progesterone, I do want to mention all of the symptoms that we as women can experience during this phase. You might experience headaches, breast tenderness, cramping, fatigue, and irritability, like we already mentioned. This is definitely not an exhaustive list, but I do just want to acknowledge that everyone is different. Everyone's bodies are different, and the way everyone experiences symptoms are different. Some women even have a more severe experience with these symptoms and may have PMDD, which we could dive into in another episode. But the foundation of understanding your cycle and understanding what your luteal phase is for you is to be a researcher of your own body and to dive into these symptoms and to track them. For this specific phase, you want to track what days are you experiencing symptoms and to what level. And this is going to really start helping to paint the picture of your unique cycle. Now, beyond just genetics, because there are certain genetic factors that play a role in how you experience your cycle, there are so many other things at the basis of it. Are you getting enough rest? Are you feeding your body the fuel that it needs? Are you actually taking care of yourself and saying no when you need to say no? And that's what this phase is honestly so magical for. It is a phase of giving you immense clarity into what is not working in your life. If you remember from the first episode of this mini series talking about this phase, it's also classified as the inner autumn. So this is our harvest. This is where we get to really reflect and go inward with the help of progesterone to evaluate what in our life is working and what isn't working. That increased emotional sensitivity that you feel during this phase is not something to be ignored. It's actually clarity resurfacing. Maybe you're starting to feel like you're overextending yourself, that you're saying yes when you really mean no, that you've been tolerating something or someone or a relationship that just actually doesn't feel good. What a blessing it is to have this time actually built in to our monthly cycle to think about these things. The problem is, though, is that can feel really irritating. This was my luteal phase that I just came out of. I felt so sad, you guys. I literally had a day where I was like, I can't get out of bed right now. I don't know why I'm sad, but I'm really sad. And I feel like I can't focus. I can't focus on anything. And instead of me pushing through that and saying, but I still need to do this and this, I actually allowed myself to rest. And through that rest came clarity. It came clarity of realizing some patterns in my life that I needed to change, some habits that have been leading to outcomes that I don't want for my future. And really just having this time to slow down and have that clarity come through. I call this part of my inner oracle of being like, oh, yeah, I know what's going on here, and I know what action needs to be taken. I know what I need to let go of when my bleed comes in a few days, which, hallelujah, she's here. She was 4 days late, but she's here. And so for me, getting to know this phase and reframing a day like that, where I don't want to get out of bed, where I feel just sad and depressed and frumpy and blah, instead of my first question being, what's wrong with me? Why am I like this? Instead, reframing to, what is this emotion telling me about myself, about my life? What is actually being shown to me right now through all of this? When we can look at any symptom through that lens of taking away the pathologizing of it all. So for example, I had a headache. Instead of saying, how do I get rid of this headache? Instead, I'm asking, why might I have this headache right now? And for me, it was very obvious that I had not drank enough water that day. And so instead of popping an ibuprofen, I first turned to water and then some nourishing tea and some electrolytes, and I felt better. I think running from or avoiding pain during this part of our cycle is also a time where we could be shutting off that clarity and that intuitive guidance that is so beautiful about this part of our cycle and the discernment piece. And speaking of tracking symptoms, you can also track your emotions and look for patterns, because patterns don't happen just in a day. Patterns happen in cycles. So maybe you start noticing when you're tracking these things and writing down the emotional experiences that you're going through, that every single month you're coming up against a certain boundary that keeps getting crossed, or every single month you're starting to see that there are difficult conversations that keep getting put off and need to be had. So this is my invitation to you, just to look for these patterns, be the investigator of your own body and of your own experience in this, and look for what keeps showing up and what your body's trying to show you, because our body is speaking its own language, and it's really our job to understand it. It's our job to decode it and know what that means for ourselves, because we are all so fabulously unique. We all have such different life experiences that have brought us to this point in different ways that our life looks on a daily basis. So understanding your specific emotional patterns and your symptoms that come up each month, I cannot preach this enough. It is so important to get a better understanding of this very mystical and misunderstood part of our cycle. Now, with all of this, I am by no means saying that PMS symptoms are not real and they just need to be dismissed. Hormonal shifts absolutely 100,000% do affect our body. There's an important distinction, though, between dismissing the luteal phase as a dysfunction and learning to listen to its wisdom. If we immediately fall into the habit of labeling every symptom, feeling, emotion as PMS, then we might be missing the important message that is a part of what our body is trying to communicate to us. From one of the teachers that I've been studying under, Jane Hardwick Collins, she talks about how your luteal phase is actually a little glimpse into what perimenopause is going to be like for you, because the hormonal shifts that are happening with a decline in estrogen is what also happens in perimenopause. And that's like our inner autumn of our life cycle as a woman. And so getting to love this part of you now and understand how some of these signals and symptoms are discernment and truth telling, and creating that positive relationship with yourself is going to pay off big time whenever you start going through perimenopause, which can begin in your mid to late 30s and usually lasts for about 10 years. So it's important that we are getting to experience our bodies through the lens of how is this actually serving me versus what's wrong with me now, so that we have that framework in place for when we undergo the inevitable changes of getting older. Another element of the luteal phase that I have grown to love is that it's a really beautiful time for completion. And this is actually a natural urge that you might experience to clean the house, to cross everything off of your to-do list, to tie up any loose ends, to complete a project so that you can go into your bleed and fully release everything and completely shed to emerge as the new fabulous version of you for your follicular phase. So I love thinking that every single month I get to evolve and shed and grow into a brand new version of myself. Okay, so I want to give you guys some practical tips on how to support your body during the luteal phase, because it doesn't have to suck, or we could at least make it suck less. So I want to share with you some of the things that I do every single luteal phase and the things that I become more aware of. One, I completely cut out caffeine and alcohol. So progesterone is the superstar hormone of this phase, and it provides that grounding, calming effect. So if your body is producing more progesterone, you're feeling more calm and grounded, adding caffeine on top of that, it completely eliminates any of the beautiful effects that you might experience from having more progesterone. So as hard as that might sound, I have actually completely eliminated coffee from my life altogether, but it started by just eliminating it for the 2 weeks of the month that I was in my luteal and my menstrual. So try cycling coffee, or maybe try a mushroom coffee, or switch to matcha during this time. Any reduction in caffeine intake is really going to help you. And then same with alcohol. When your body is wanting to feel more of that calm and groundedness, adding any additional toxins into the system just isn't going to be supportive. The second thing, which we already talked about, was eat more. Eat more. Don't skip breakfast. Don't do intermittent fasting. Really focus on, if you're hungry, then eat, and know that your metabolism is going to take care of it. You burn 100 to 300 more calories per day, just your body doing its thing when you're in your luteal phase. So eat more. One of my favorite rituals of my luteal phase is having luteal toast. This was an idea that a friend of mine created, and I just love it. I don't really eat bread at all outside of a few days of my luteal where I'm really feeling it, and I'm like, I'm gonna have a piece of luteal toast, and I'll make some yummy sourdough with some olive oil and some salt, and it makes everything better. So eat more. My third tip for you is to skip that high intensity interval training class. I still have movement during my luteal phase, but I focus more on going on walks, doing mat Pilates classes, nothing that is too high intensity or cardio based. And maybe some heavier strength training I'll do as well during the luteal, like just some weightlifting, nothing too intense though. If you sign up for a class and you wake up and you feel really tired, just skip it. Allow yourself to listen to your body's signals and know that this is a period where you are winding down for more rest. Another tip is to not overbook your calendar during this time. I like to keep social commitments to an absolute minimum during my luteal phase because I just don't know how I'm going to be feeling. I feel way more social actually during my menstrual, during my bleed, than I do during my luteal. My luteal can be really quite challenging. And so I like to keep my calendar as open as possible to really knock off the things that I've been wanting to get done for myself personally. And if you have a full-time job, just be aware that there's those little pockets in the day where you can make decisions to create a more nurturing environment for yourself. Instead of going home and binge watching Netflix, maybe you take a bath or order a meal from your favorite restaurant, or you go on a nature walk. You know, all of these little moments and the things that you decide to do in them, even if you don't have a ton of time to create space for yourself, they all matter. And for my spiritual girlies out there, journal, reflect, spend time in introspection and meditation and mindfulness. These practices, and for me, my daily ritual at my altar in the mornings of lighting my candle, burning my Palo Santo, saying my prayers, and just giving myself that moment of peace before I'm going into the chaos of the day, it probably speaks to me the loudest during the luteal phase. I feel the most benefit from having this practice during this time. Because again, we want to learn to listen to our own bodies. We want to listen to what our bodies and our emotions are actually saying and decoding them versus medicalizing them or pathologizing them into something's wrong. This is such a special time that we get every single month where we are encouraged to go more inward and evaluate what is and isn't working. Where do we maybe need to set stronger boundaries in our life? where do things maybe just not feel aligned with our career and what we're working on and how we're spending our time? The luteal phase isn't a problem to manage. It's a messenger. When we stop fighting it and start listening to it, it becomes one of the most powerful phases of our cycle for self-transformation. I truly believe that, even as hard as it can be sometimes. I always look at the days where I am in sadness and stillness and it's hard to see the light. I look at those days and I think to myself, this is good. I know this is where I'm supposed to be. I know that there is something coming through in this that I would not be able to feel if I was always in that springtime, summertime, estrogen haze. This phase is really the spiritual path, I would say, to our highest alignment. And if this episode resonated with you today, please take a moment to share it with any other women in your life. My mission on this planet is to help every woman that I can to fall in love with her cycle. There is nothing that would bring me more joy than the full reclamation of this process. And I'm starting to see it more and more. It's just becoming so much more normally talked about and shared about, and more information is present. You know, just this past weekend, I was volunteering at an event for moms and daughters to talk about puberty, a room of 10-year-olds learning about the actual anatomy of their body, about what periods are and what they can expect, and the emotional shifts and changes and how it aligns with the moon. And I was almost in tears just thinking about the impact, even if they might not have felt it in that day as a 10-year-old, the impact, though, that's going to have on their life as a woman who has many more rites of passage to come after going through menarche. And y'all, this is the truth. This is everything that I believe is our birthright to remember. And I am so honored to be walking this path with you. Next week, I'm going to give you guys some practical tools and tips on cycle tracking. And I can't wait to continue diving in even deeper on this path of this menstrual cycle mini-series. I'll see you next time.